together and we'll get it undone. Someday when your head is much lighter. Hey, fourth grade. Welcome to reading. That is a great song. And I sometimes sing it to my students in class when they are struggling or they had a rough moment. But there is a history to the song, and I picked it for a specific reason because it goes with sort of the storyline of our lesson today. So as we exit this lesson, I'll get back and play a little bit more. But I have an awesome book, and when I was researching books to use and stories to use today about theme, this story came up. So I'm excited to have you watch it and learn about a little bit of the history of that song, but more specifically, history of our country during a certain time period. Hey guys, it's Miss Mull here, and we are going to learn about theme again today. So we get to do that. We're going to practice with a story, and our homework or our classwork really will be using a poem. And there's actually a link from the poem to the story today in our lesson. So I tried to roll it all together. So we're going to see if we can become a little bit more of an expert on theme. I've had an opportunity to teach this target, this lesson target and this standard already with you during our distance learning, and also when we were at Hidden Valley in our actual classroom. So I'm really excited to get to welcome you guys. So hi to Miss Mull's homeroom, Miss Gist and Miss Dare, Miss Heb, Miss Jefferson, Miss Allison, students, welcome. And I'm really excited to come to you today and to reiterate and reteach this lesson. Let's go ahead and read together, and in class we would do it out loud, so hopefully you will join in with me while you're at your home and through the little bubble here, the little window, the little camera. So let's go ahead and read it. I can determine the theme of a story, drama, or poem from details in the text, and I can summarize the text. I have talked to you a little bit about common themes in literature. And so I have a couple of slides, and I actually used these slides in a previous lesson, but this time I have highlighted in green and in pink some themes that we might hit on in a story that we read later. So we will, right? But these are some common themes that are in literature. And remember, a theme is the overall message. What does the author want you to take away, to learn? What is the lesson being taught through the story that you are reading? The characters go through problems and different obstacles, and we learn about how they are navigating some obstacles and some problems. And sometimes the characters learn through that. They learn through their struggle, and we can take bits and pieces of what they are saying and thinking, feeling, and doing, and we can figure out what the theme or the message, the lesson is. So we do have this idea of fairness and equality and what it means to be brave today in our lesson. Some other common themes, you've got hard work and keeping up with family traditions. You've got this idea of jealousy. I would say an enemy pie. Our character worked through some jealousy, and hopefully you learned a little bit about, how to put those feelings aside and giving people benefit of the doubt. I have highlighted cooperation and what it means to work together. This idea of acceptance and peace is going to be maybe a theme that we talk about today. Overcoming adversity. Adversity means problem. So it's a fancy word of saying that there's a problem or situation. Adversity is really hard to overcome. Maybe you were born with a difference. I think there was a lesson where a father was in an accident and could no longer use his legs. And that's an adversity, definitely a new normal that this dad and this family had to deal with. What does it mean to take a stand? Are we willing to take a stand for what is right? I think sometimes we know what's right, but are we willing to go above and beyond? Knowing what's right is one thing, but doing what's right when it's really hard and could maybe even get you in trouble, which is kind of interesting. That sounds like it would be not the way life is, but sometimes it is. And, freedom, our freedoms that we have come at a cost. I want you to ask yourself while you're trying to identify theme in a story is, what does the author hope the reader realizes? What do you need to walk away with? How can you be a better person because of what you read? What does the author hope the reader realizes? I'm just going to move my head a little bit so we can just see. I want you to ask yourself these questions. How does the plot contribute to the theme? Remember, plot is the storyline, the beginning action, the introduction, the rising action, all the way. You might be faced with some problems right here, and then there's this point in the story where things start to change, and we have a resolution and a conclusion, an outcome towards the end. So I need for you to pay attention to what is going on in the story. But you need to ask yourself, how does this plot contribute to the message, to the lesson, to the theme? Do the characters say or do things that contribute to the theme? Maybe it's their action, but maybe they're reacting to an action. But how do they react? What are they doing and saying? Do the characters change? Do people around them change? And what lessons were learned? On the next slide, I take those ideas and I give you some graphics. Thoughts on theme. Look for these ideas. Sometimes I can remember a picture or an image, but I don't always remember all of... Sorry, my daughter is texting me. Has he been fed? And the answer is yes. So excuse me as I text her back. Yes, he has. Excuse me. I'm recording. Hold on. There we go. Remember what that previous slide said, so I apologize. I'm actually going to go to that slide and remind you before we were interrupted. How does the plot contribute to the theme? Do the characters say or do things that contribute to the theme? Do the characters change? What lessons were learned? So again, what I know about image and what I know about pictures is you can remember pictures better than a whole list of words. So it's really, this slide is sort of saying what the slide before said, but with pictures. So I want you to remember what the story is about. And this image right here, that's sort of a story graphic. So we have our introduction and we have that rising action. We have something that changes in the story. Maybe it's a character or some events. And then we have our ending. So I need for you to remember when you're reading the story, what's happening. I want you to remember what the characters are saying or doing, right? So we have this pow. I'm not suggesting that there's fighting, but the pow word suggests action, I think. And then we have this dialogue bubble. Does a character change? We have sort of the naughty and nice moment here, but I want you to think about some change, maybe internally inside a character and what maybe they believe. Maybe there's some change as a result of a character's actions that other people are seeing, and then they change. I mean, we learn about history, right? Because we want to know the story of way back, but we study history and the events in our country's history and in the world's history to learn lessons. I mean, we don't want to go back and repeat mistakes. So let's think about those moments that change took place and how can we learn. So I have sort of a balance here, and it really symbolizes equality, right? So if something is equal on the left, it's equal on the right. So I kind of put an image right there, a symbol of equality, and fairness is something that is often taught through stories. And this idea of peace could be a lesson, and this idea of, even forgiveness or love, friendship, all of those lessons that are learned when we are reading. So pay attention to the story, pay attention to actions and words, pay attention to some change that is taking place. And I want you to then think about lessons learned and how you can apply them to your life. I have a story called The Youngest Marcher. It is a biography. So an autobiography would be a story that's written by the person, right? So if Thomas Jefferson wrote a story about his life, auto means he wrote it. Biography is a story of his life. This one that we're going to read is a story about somebody. So about somebody in our history. And the youngest marcher, and I'm just thinking to myself, it probably has to do with a little person. And then let's think about marching. When in our history has there been a march? So there are definitely some important words to know, and I just selected 6. And there are way more, and Miss Barnhart might go ahead and add additional slides to help us. But I picked out 6. Some of you have read these words and seen these words before. I'm so sorry, you're going to hear my children. So I have biography, and that's a written account of somebody's life. Segregation, that means setting something or someone apart from other people or things. I read to the class, and we watched a video on White Socks Only. So I want you to remember back then that storyline of the little girl stepping on the Whites Only fountain. And I want you to make a connection from that story to possibly this story. But I did pick this image right here to maybe help you remember what segregation means. And it's keeping people apart for one reason or other. And during our history of, our country, we have sad moments, and we had the time in our history where African Americans could not use specific things and sit in specific places and go to specific places or walk even through the front door of some place or sit at a counter or use a water fountain. We read a story called Back of the Bus, where it was this little guy's point of view when Rosa Parks refused to get up. So we have some text and we have some background schema knowledge on this. So that's really great as we move into the story. But segregation, again, means setting something apart or someone apart. Activist. So a person who campaigns or brings about political or social change. I found this image of Martin Luther King. He actually makes an appearance in our story today. So I thought that was a great visual. Protest. It's an organized public action or demonstration for change. This can be peaceful or it can be violent. And in our story, there was a peaceful moment. And I know you saw the word marcher, the youngest marcher. There's nothing violent about marching for your belief and taking a stand. Sometimes what happens as a result of that march creates violence. But that protest in and out of itself is very peaceful, and we all have the right to do that. The idea of equality, the idea of being equal, and racism. I put these 2 ideas as well. You might have had those words in your word bank, but we have the prejudice and discrimination, and those fall in line with racism. It's the idea that one race is better than the other. I have a video here, and today I am not playing it right here, but I definitely want you to go back because this will build some prior knowledge in it. I love this because there's some historical scenes in this, but then there's also, I believe, a fifth or sixth grade group of people that actually go back to the site and their school's philosophy. I don't remember where the school is from. I think maybe Chicago or somewhere. In the middle area of our country, but they took a trip to Alabama where this story took place. The actual march took place. And so their teachers brought them back and they walked the site and the march together. And they got to interview people that actually participated in the march. And it was just a cool way of bringing the story sort of full circle for you. So I need for you to go back and watch this as part of your lesson. And I think you will really enjoy it. Now, I want to actually play this. And I know sometimes there's an echo when you play it, but I am going to play this. It's a book trailer, and it's The Youngest Marcher. And we are not going to listen to the entire book together during this slide, but I do have some central questions that I want you to ask yourself. And I am going to play this trailer so you have an idea during this part of our lesson what the story is about. So I want us to watch the book trailer of The Youngest Marcher. It's the story of Audrey Faye Hendrick by Cynthia Levinson. I want you to think about how it would feel if you were Audrey. Would you be willing to march for civil rights even if it meant you would be thrown in jail? Is the right thing to do worth the risk? Remember, when we look for theme and a message, we're looking for what? And we're asking ourselves, what does the author want us to realize?
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Imagine having Martin Luther King Jr. himself sit down at your dinner table. Imagine Dr. King asking you to stand up for your community, for your nation. Audrey Faye Hendricks and the people of Birmingham did not have to imagine it. From the pulpit, Dr. King personally asked them to march in the streets, get arrested, and fill the jails to end segregation. Jail? Now that was serious. That was risky. Yet 9-year-old Audrey Faye Hendricks leapt to her feet and said yes. She said yes when all the adults she knew said no. You know who else said yes? 3,000 other children. They marched, were confronted by police, and were jailed to show America the injustice of segregation. And of all of them, Audrey was the youngest. Jail was harsher than she'd imagined. Freedom was harder to obtain than she'd realized. But Audrey and 3,000 other children filled those cells, just as Dr. King had asked. What do you think happened next? Did freedom win that day? Explore more in the pages of The Youngest Marcher, the story of Audrey Faye Hendricks, a young civil rights activist, a nonfiction picture book by Cynthia Levinson, illustrated by Vanessa Brantley Newton, and published by Athenaeum Books for Young Readers. Look for it at your favorite bookstore or library. Keep on talking, marching into freedom land.
I don't know if you caught the date, but she passed away. It's a real story of a real person. Remember, that's what a biography is about. But she passed away in 2009, so about 11 years ago. When you go back to watch this, and this little cute teacher over here reads the story, and she has so much energy and enthusiasm as she reads the story. So I just thought she did a fantastic job. So I included her reading the video of her reading this story. She asks you to pause and think. She asks some really great questions. But really, guys, as you listen to the story, think about what the author wants you to realize. What can we learn from Audrey Faye Hendricks? What is she thinking and doing? What is the plot? What is happening? What is the lesson? How do they react to what's going on? What is she doing that's so remarkable at such a young age? Thoughts on theme. And I want you to talk about, and we want to talk about those thoughts about the theme. I'm going to jump ahead, and I would say at this point, you could technically stop my lesson here and then watch the story. Okay, you follow the link in the resources and then come back here. And we are on, about slide 14. You can just sort of fast forward, or you can follow along with me right now. But I'm suggesting to you that if we were in class, I would say, okay, this is the point where we're going to watch the story and then come back and discuss. So it is up to you what you do right now, but you must come back and finish this lesson. After we read this story, there are some ideas. There are some lessons. There are some themes. I want you to think about these that I have mentioned. I want you to think about what you think the theme might be. I highlighted some common themes. Remember that? We have this idea of fairness and bravery. I mean, was it fair back then for African Americans? Absolutely not. Were they treated with equality? Does it mean that you're not scared when you're brave? I think a lot of times people think people that are brave aren't scared, and I'm not so sure that's true. This idea of peace, right? And Martin Luther King, his dream was that we would all live in a place that we accepted each other no matter what. I think you would see these ideas. Can you make a difference at your age? Do you have to be old in order to make a difference? This is actually Audrey Faye Hendrick when she participated in the march. Would you have taken a stand like Audrey? Do you believe you can make a difference right now? As we finish up our lesson today, our time together, I want you to think about the learning target. I can determine a theme of a story, drama, or poem from details in the text, and I can summarize that text. Your tasks. Definitely go back. You may watch this again. Go look at the questions that you have to ask yourself. Think about the lesson learned. Really dissect and analyze what the characters are doing and saying and how they're behaving and feeling. Put yourself in Audrey's shoes. And I would say, in order to determine theme in any text, if you are given a character, try to pretend that you are them and walk a mile in their shoes. And I just know, trust me, that you will be able to walk away with a lesson. So I am pretty sure that Miss Barnhart will put together some vocabulary slides, add some additional highlighted words that maybe we have found in the text or in the lesson that will help you. There is a comprehension Kahoot, so a review of the story of the youngest marcher that I found on Kahoot. So you can go ahead and play that as part of your lesson. See if you remember the details of the text. And I have an exit ticket quiz assignment that I use, that you will read a poem and I will ask you about the theme, the overall message, the takeaway today. Guys, you can always learn from the past. But we learn so that we're better, not so that we repeat it. Audrey was an incredible little girl, and you are an incredible human now. You can make a difference. You can take a stand. I'm going to play that song that we started our lesson today with, and finish this out. But if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to your teachers and make sure you go back and watch the story of Audrey Hendricks today before you go and do your assignment. Love y'all. I miss y'all. I wonder if Audrey felt like this. Thankful to her and her steps and her willingness, right? Bye, guys.